The U.S. Supreme Court heard oral arguments over the president's use of a 1977 law to impose his kind of sweeping tariffs across the globe. Now, the International Emergency Economic Powers Act provides that the president has authority to regulate a variety of economic transactions following a declaration of national emergency, and it kind of lays out what those emergencies might be. But justices on the Supreme Court seem skeptical about the president's justification to impose these tariffs kind of globally.
Is it your contention that every country needed to be tariffed because of threats to the defense and industrial base? I mean, Spain, France, I could see it with some countries, but explain to me why as many countries needed to be subject to the reciprocal tariff policy as are.
That was Justice Amy Coney Barrett asking that question of the Solicitor General, who was defending the position of the Trump administration. So what could the impact be of a ruling by the Supreme Court on the president's use of these tariffs? Joining me now to discuss this is economist Jerry Bowyer. He is the CEO of Bowyer Research. Jerry, welcome back to Washington Watch. Thanks for joining us.
Pleasure to be with you, as always.
So what's your read on where the justices appear to be headed based on yesterday's oral arguments and the questioning?
I think they're headed back to the text of the Constitution and the original intent of the founders, which is that revenues are a function of Article 1 of the Constitution, the legislative branch, with a focus on the House of Representatives, and that presidents do not have the authority to raise taxes, including tariffs, which are just another form of tax. They are a sales tax on imported goods. And it's interesting, I think, that the conservative justices are actually being conservative on this case. Amy Barrett, for example, making that argument. The liberal justices, I think, just don't like anything from Trump. And I think that's going to amount to a kind of landslide against the president on this issue, which I think is justified on constitutional grounds. As much as I'm a supporter of a great deal of the president's agenda, including his economic agenda, not so much the trade war, constitutionally, he just does not have this authority. And I think the courts are going to say that.
Now, Jerry, his argument, or the argument of the administration, is that the exploding trade deficits had brought us to the brink of an economic and national security catastrophe. And so based on that, that's why he took those actions.
Yes, I don't think that's a valid argument because emergency generally applies something that has not been going on for 50 years. Emergency, plain English language, and in the statute is something that happens suddenly, a crisis, a war, something along those lines. But a trade balance issue, which really goes back even before 1977, America has run trade deficits for almost all of its existence. Our model is largely been a model where we buy things from overseas and then those dollars fly back, kind of come back in as capital investments. Something that is normal for probably 90% of the years in American history, which is us running trade deficits, can't suddenly become an emergency in 2025. It just doesn't make any sense. It defies the language.
Is part of that the kind of the consumer orientation of America?
I think it is, and I don't think it's a good thing. I think that Americans don't save much. So in Japan, for example, they have very high deficits, but they also have high savings rates. So Japanese savers fund the Japanese government's debts. But American savers are not funding the American government's debts, which means foreigners do that. So we have an intricate system here which kind of holds together. We get goods from overseas. We send those dollars in exchange, and those dollars come back and fund our federal government. I don't like that very much. But the fact is, that's the way the system is set up now. And unless we become a nation of savers, and unless we get control of our spending and get control of our national debt, we really can't afford a trade war. I don't like our dependence on foreigners for funding our national debt. But we have a national debt, and the way it's funded essentially is through our trade deficits. So become a saving society, and the problem solves itself without protectionism.
We just have a little over 2 minutes left. Jerry, you're an economist. One of the issues in the election, the exit polling in the election on Tuesday, and I have some issue with the election, the exit polling, because they only asked 5 questions as to what the number one issue is. They had nothing to do with the moral or the value issues, but they primarily skewed toward the economic issues. And so that went to the top. And there, people are feeling economic pain. Is that at all related to the cost of items that have gone up as a result of this trade war?
Yes, absolutely. I think that the main reason the president won the election was inflation. Now, as a conservative Christian, I might wish that he won the election for other reasons more than that. But I have to acknowledge from my friends and neighbors and everybody else, it was the rising price of everything, including food. Tariffs don't help with that. And it's so interesting to see how people think that, well, maybe tariffs might cause inflation, they might not. Maybe they cause prices to go up. I don't think they understand. Tariffs are supposed to cause prices to go up. That's the function of a tariff. If goods are coming in from overseas and they're cheaper, the idea is by raising the price of those goods, by adding a tax, that means that local producers can raise the price of their goods. So when the president says to beef producers, hey, cut the price of beef, I did you a favor with the tariffs, the beef producers say, wait a minute, the tariffs were so we could raise the price of beef. So tariffs are inflationary. It's plain and simple. And I think, I think the big, beautiful bill is good enough. It doesn't need the help of the protectionism. I think we now are in a competitive position. Let the president's deregulation and tax cuts work. We don't need a thumb on the scale in the form of trade taxes.
So is that why I'm paying more for my coffee when I go to the grocery store?
Well, of course it is, right? Because we don't have a climate in America where we can grow coffee or cocoa. So the stuff that's grown around the equator, or things that come from overseas, are more expensive. And we know it when we go to the grocery store. So beef even is up in price.
Yeah.
So that's tariffs cause inflation. That's what's going on. If the president gets rid of that, we can sail in the midterms.
Might drive me to drink tea. I don't know. All right, Jerry, thanks so much for joining us.